Welcome race fans to the spectacular Auto Club Speedway Reval. I'm Martin Haven alongside Anthony Davidson. We have an absolute powder keg today in this Copa Classic B shootout. Andy East puts his Chevette sporting the 17 livery on pole just ahead of MTG and Rafin in the sleek Puma GTEs. We have 60 minutes, a terrifyingly compressed day-night cycle and sheer chaos awaiting us at Fontana. The tension is incredibly palpable. Let us get this race underway. The green flag drops, it is pedal to the metal into the first corner. MTG immediately wastes absolutely zero time off the start line. He slides his aerodynamic Puma straight past Dom Payne to snatch second place before they even reach the transition zone. Brilliant move.
This track is incredibly deceptive, Martin. You get massive slipstreams up on the banked oval, but then you plunge into a brutally tight, completely green infield. Brake locking will be a nightmare. Seeing Daniel Bourne plummet to 11th is bizarre. It seems he took that bumpy transition painfully slow to protect his virtual cargo.
Payne violently bites right back. He reclaims second position from MTG with absolute sheer brute force. Muzza dives inside, but Rafin violently slams the door shut. The telemetry truther is holding firm.
Rafin is taking incredibly bizarre racing lines, Martin. He refuses to turn his steering wheel past 15 degrees because of some rogue data app. It makes him completely unpredictable defending.
Muzza finally finds a way through to take fifth. He simply waited for Rafin to drift hopelessly wide into the grass on corner exit. Now Muzza can safely latch onto the back of the next car like the true parasitic remora he is.
The Pumas own the oval, but the Chevettes possess grunt to dominate the inside.
Sock Racer easily surges past the struggling Rafin now. Holdeny chucks his Uno entirely sideways and snatches seventh. Rafin is out mowing lawns. Disaster strikes. Yellow flags are frantically waving as Rafin stops entirely on the circuit. He was staring so hard at his tyre overlays that he completely forgot to look at the other cars passing him.
We are safely back to green flag racing. Rafin tumbling down the order is exactly what happens when you prioritise looking at a glitching telemetry app over the actual track.
Rafin is violently slicing his way back through the slower Fusca field, snatching 21st and 20th place without exceeding his strict 15-degree turning limit.
He is making decent recovery progress, passing another AI competitor for 19th. However, if he keeps deliberately dropping wheels onto the grass just to artificially widen his corner radius, he will inevitably overheat those rear tyres before the midday sun hits us.
Dom Payne firmly attaches his Chevette to the draft of our race leader, Andy East. He is absolutely reeling the mini-master in right now. It is 3 wide. MTG joins the leaders. Utter chaos unfolds. Dom Payne seizes the moment and boldly snatches the race lead from Andy East. Andy must be absolutely sweltering in his shed, sweating profusely as Payne slips cleanly past his inside.
He is literally parking his car squarely on the transition curb. Dom has entirely hyper-fixated on this specific patch of real estate. If East attempts to pass him without typing paid, Payne will absolutely squeeze him straight into the wall.
East ignores the toll fee and reclaims first.
MTG attacks Payne.
Sock Racer is fiercely battling Muzza for 5th place.
Sock Racer throws it inside, but Muzza valiantly holds his ground and defends that precious 5th position. Sock Racer forces the issue. He muscles past Muzza with massive clouds of brake smoke trailing behind.
Muzza counterattacks. He desperately needs a slipstream to survive, so he cleverly slips right back past Sock Racer to safely reclaim that 5th position.
But Sock Racer responds instantly. He surges forward once again, aggressively reclaiming 5th from Muzza. Muzza strikes back. The classic remora refuses to let go of his drafting host.
Sock Racer is visibly struggling with his hardware. His throttle is stuck at 80% after spilling tea on his pedals, so his corner entry speeds are completely unpredictable. Muzza has absolutely no idea when Sock Racer might suddenly surge forward violently.
Sock Racer's foot just slipped off his clutch. The car surges with 80% throttle right out of the corner, entirely by accident, and blasts past Muzza for 5th place. 5 minutes in, and the standings are absolute madness. Andy East leads Dom Payne and MTG. Tomo is 4th, ahead of Sock Racer and Muzza. Holdeny sits 7th, Grumpy 1/8, followed by the recovering Daniel Bourne. Track temperatures are rapidly climbing upwards now. Daniel Bourne is making bold moves. He tiptoes his Chevette around the outside of Edvaldo Lopes to snatch 9th place, driving with excruciating smoothness to keep his imaginary trunk cargo perfectly intact.
It is honestly hilarious watching Daniel tackle the infield. He genuinely believes this event is a virtual braai, not a race. He is carrying an imaginary payload of raw burrowas and unstable potato salad. Taking that bumpy curb at 35 miles per hour is simply his bizarre form of extreme grocery management out there.
Lopes tucks neatly into Bourne's massive slipstream down the straight. The AI driver is hunting down that potato salad. Bourne catches Grumpy One and they are completely side by side. Bourne carefully executes the overtake for 8th place without spilling a single drop of imaginary marinade. He is making slow, steady progress through this chaotic midfield pack.
Grumpy One immediately tries to switch back underneath Bourne, but Daniel aggressively shuts the door. We know Daniel will panic over his radio if anyone gets too close and creates turbulence around his car. He is deeply terrified of anyone crushing those metaphorical eggs in his trunk, so he'll definitely fight incredibly hard to keep everyone securely behind his rear bumper.
Tomo is absolutely hounding MTG for 3rd. These two are a brilliant contrast. MTG is perfectly clinical, acting as the unofficial lobby steward, while Tomo is a pure chaotic mathematician. Tomo hates the infield and will happily straight line every chicane if he calculates the penalty will leave him a few tenths faster than braking for the corners.
Tomo stalks MTG through the technical sections, desperately plotting his next penalty evading track cut. MTG is noticeably driving slower than his actual pace because he is constantly checking his mirrors to police Tomo's driving standards. Having the sporting code open on his second monitor is completely ruining his focus during this intense podium battle.
Tomo is searching frantically for an opening. He is weaving behind MTG's Puma, waiting for the perfect opportunity to launch over a sausage curb. He simply refuses to use the actual tarmac when there is a perfectly good grass shortcut readily available nearby.
Tomo is utterly glued to MTG's bumper now as track temperatures steadily rise into the midday heat. Drafting becomes even more crucial. Staying tucked in the slipstream on the steep oval banking offers a massive top speed advantage for these cars.
Tomo refuses to back down. He is relentlessly filling MTG's mirrors, putting massive psychological pressure on our self-appointed vintage racing rules steward. They are side by side entering the braking zone. Tomo makes a massive dive. Tomo absolutely blasts past MTG for 3rd place, but he did it completely off the circuit. He barreled straight through the infield grass at 120 miles per hour, treating the chicane like a mild suggestion. He takes the position, but you just know MTG is already furiously typing out a protest in the global text chat.
MTG immediately pulls alongside Tomo on the exit. The battle is far from over.
MTG clinically retakes 3rd place. He executed a textbook racing line while lecturing Tomo over the radio about his entirely suboptimal braking point. Justice is swiftly served by the track limits lawyer.
It is utterly baffling logic, Martin. Tomo has spent hours doing bizarre mathematics regarding the simulator's penalty system. He genuinely believes that cutting the corner and accepting the automated engine power reduction penalty is mathematically faster than using his brakes. He is weaponizing the game engine mechanics instead of actually driving the circuit properly. I've never seen anyone race with a calculator on their dashboard.
He still leads the pack.
We have a brilliant three-way scrap developing here. Tomo is dragging himself up behind MTG while MTG is completely locked onto the bumper of Dom Payne. One small mistake will entirely scatter this tense pack.
Oh my goodness, MTG is practically having a meltdown on the radio. He is shouting about car 4 exceeding track limits. He has appointed himself as the Grand Marshal of Fontana. Today, instead of focusing on passing Dom Payne for 2nd place, MTG is spending his valuable time desperately trying to get Tomo disqualified. It is completely absurd behavior, but it adds to the spectacular theater of this incredibly chaotic multi-class endurance sprint. Further back, Ray Finn is urgently hunting down Grumpy One for 9th place. His bizarrely wide arcing sweeps through the corners are making this overtake look incredibly painful.
Ray Finn finally manages to secure 8th position from Grumpy One, but it was far from pretty because he point blank refuses to turn his steering wheel sharply. He is completely oblivious to cars on his inside. Grumpy One had to take evasive action to avoid getting pushed onto the grass there. Ray Finn's absolute obsession with his tyre temperature telemetry data is making him a genuine hazard during these close battles.
Sock Racer is stubbornly clinging to Muzzer's bumper in the battle for fifth, even with a physically ruined pedal set. Sock Racer refuses to surrender. He is treating this mechanical nightmare as an authentic vintage racing challenge and pushing through the pain.
Following Muzzer is incredibly frustrating. Muzzer hates driving in clean air and actively avoids braking wind resistance. If he accidentally passes someone, he panics and hits the brakes. Sock Racer is trapped behind a driver who has zero ambition to lead.
Sock Racer is driving like an absolute madman. Despite his throttle jamming at 80%, he successfully navigates the technical infield using only his brakes and clutch to manage speed. The massive tyre smoke pouring from his wheel arches is blinding. He is refusing to let Muzzer simply leach away into the sunny midday distance.
MTG is turning the screws on Dom Payne for second. Payne's bizarre defensive tactics on the infield transition are heavily slowing them both down.
Yellow flags. Dom Payne has literally parked his Chevette mid-corner. Complete chaos ensues as Tomo dives past both Payne and MTG to steal second place. The absolute madness is escalating.
We are safely back to green. MTG instantly repasses Tomo for second place. Tomo likely served an automated slowdown penalty precisely on the apex there, hoping to trap MTG behind his car.
I cannot believe my eyes. Dom Payne has practically brought his Chevette to a complete standstill on the narrowest section of the track. He has just dropped his PayPal link into the session chat, brazenly demanding a £1.50 track maintenance fee to use his chosen corner exit. If anyone tries to overtake him without typing the word paid, he is aggressively squeezing them straight into the retaining wall. This is literal highway robbery in a classic motorsports event.
Sock Racer has dragged his damaged machine right up behind Tomo's bumper. This is an incredible effort. Despite managing that 80% stuck throttle by heavily riding his clutch and brakes, Sock Racer is still somehow matching the outright pace of the top three. It is a brilliant display of vintage survival.
Sock Racer is absolutely hounding Tomo for the final podium spot. He is violently surging out of the corners whenever his foot slips off that boiling hot clutch pedal. Tomo has absolutely no clue what is happening behind him, constantly checking his mirrors as Sock Racer erratically brake boosts his way around the tight Fontana infield.
The heat is peaking now. Sock Racer's constant brake dragging will surely boil his brake fluid before the dusk falls.
12 minutes down, Andy East is disappearing out front. MTG holds second, followed by Tomo, the smoking Sock Racer, and toll collector Dom Payne. Muzzer is safely leaching in sixth, ahead of Born Rafin and Grumpy One. The entire AI pack trails them, struggling with a chaotic pace.
Tomo is predictably ignoring the chicanes to maintain his gap. Sock Racer, however, is being forced to take the authentic racing line simply to properly cool his massively overheating brake disc on entry.
The man is an absolute legend. After spilling boiling tea all over his pedals during the briefing, his throttle is jammed. He refuses to quit, framing it as an authentic mechanical gremlin.
Driving a rear-wheel drive classic with a stuck throttle is terrifying. You can visibly see the immense smoke billowing out of his rear arches as he fights the engine torque with his brakes.
Muzzer is the ultimate track parasite. He has absolutely zero interest in pushing the heavy air himself. He is latched onto the back of Tomo Chevette and will happily sit there, refusing to make an actual overtaking maneuver all day.
Tomo is mathematically calculating his penalties while Sock Racer is physically wrestling a broken pedal set behind him. This is truly the most bizarre battle for third place I have ever witnessed in my entire broadcasting career. They are completely unmatched.
Sock Racer lunges forward uncontrollably. Again, he almost punts Tomo straight into the barrier. Tomo must be terrified of this unpredictable smoke-belching machine constantly breathing down his neck at every single braking zone.
Andy East is currently dominating this race, but his onboard camera is highly concerning. To simulate a vintage cabin, he sealed himself inside a sweltering shed. The intense heat is clearly inducing severe paranoia. He is swerving erratically down the long oval straights, constantly checking his virtual blind spots, genuinely convinced that a coordinated psychological attack from the pack is entirely imminent.
Tomo was caught right back up to MTG. He is relentlessly filling the mirrors of the track limits lawyer, dragging that entirely parasitic Remora Muzzer and the smoking sock racer along with him.
This accelerated timeline is brutal. We are officially hitting the midday peak temperature zone. Grip is optimal, but tyre wear is accelerating rapidly. Any driver pushing too hard through the infield right now will massively overheat their rubber before dusk.
They are nose to tail. Tomo tries to cut the grass again, but MTG perfectly parks his Puma right on the apex, physically blocking the mathematical driver's favourite shortcut. Brilliant defensive driving.
Tomo takes the slowdown penalty on purpose, parking his car on the racing line during the forced engine cut to deliberately trap MTG behind him. It is a completely diabolical, calculating strategy.
MTG's car is visibly slowing down. He is literally typing a formal complaint into the global chat while navigating the most dangerous corner on the track. He is absolutely, utterly obsessed, Anthony.
It is fascinating. MTG is driving a clinically perfect race, hitting every single apex and maximizing aerodynamic efficiency. Meanwhile, Tomo is driving like a complete hooligan, violently launching over sausage curbs and using the game's automated penalty logic as a genuine tactical weapon. It is the ultimate clash of sim racing philosophies right here in the battle for second.
Rayfin is closing in on Daniel Bourne. Bourne is creeping over the bumps to protect his precious imaginary bride Meat, making him a sitting duck on the long oval straight.
Rayfin attempts the overtake, but his self-imposed steering limit makes his attack incredibly awkward. He takes a massive arcing sweep that consumes the entire width of the track. Bourne brilliantly fights back on the inside line, carefully avoiding any contact that might metaphorically crush the eggs in his trunk. If Rayfin actually looked at his mirrors instead of his telemetry screen, he might have completed that pass cleanly there.
East dominates MTG and Tomo battle for second. Sock Racer, Payne, Muzzer and Bourne trail closely behind.
Rayfin slots back into the draft. Being trapped behind Bourne is incredibly frustrating because Daniel is taking the transition at 35 miles per hour. Rayfin is losing all of his crucial aerodynamic momentum on the high-speed banking sections right now.
Rayfin swings out again. He desperately wants 7th position, but he refuses to turn his wheel sharply. It is like watching a cargo ship trying to parallel park around Daniel Bourne's carefully driven, grocery-laden Chevette. This is absolutely priceless entertainment.
Bourne is fiercely defending his virtual cargo. Whenever Rayfin gets too close, Daniel instantly gets on the radio complaining about the aerodynamic slipstream turbulence, violently shaking the delicate marinade in his trunk.
He is literally dipping 2 wheels into the grass to weed in his turns. Rayfin is completely terrified of a meaningless telemetry spike. He genuinely believes his front left tyre will absolutely instantly detonate.
It is a totally bizarre stalemate. Rayfin has the aerodynamic advantage in the Puma, but his self-imposed steering restriction means Bourne could easily outmaneuver him through every single tight hairpin on this infield road course.
Rayfin tries it around the outside. He sweeps incredibly wide, keeping his eyes entirely glued to his tyre temperature overlay. Instead of watching the actual road, Bourne sees the massive gap on the inside and expertly sneaks his Chevette right back into 7th place. Daniel is taking absolutely nil chances with his precious culinary cargo. Rayfin is completely oblivious, drifting aimlessly toward the retaining wall while mathematically calculating his steering angle. This grid is absolutely full of brilliant madmen today.
This is the danger zone. The accelerated sunset is reflecting blindingly off the asphalt. Drivers are entirely guessing their braking markers into
The tables have turned. Bourne is now relentlessly hunting Rayfin. The sun glare is intense, but Daniel's unhinged catering determination is driving him forward through the blindness. Approaching the half-hour mark, East leads perfectly ahead of MTG, Tomo, Sock Racer, Payne, Muzzer and Rayfin.
Daniel is applying incredibly smart pressure here. He knows Rayfin is completely distracted by his third-party telemetry apps and the rapidly changing track temperatures. Bourne is just calmly waiting for Rayfin to take one of those impossibly wide lines through the infield chicanes. As soon as Rayfin dips those tyres onto the cooling grass to widen his turning radius, Daniel will calmly slide his Chevette underneath him to secure that position. It is a waiting game for Bourne now.
He hits the transition at literally 30 miles per hour. the potato salad is perfectly safe.
Bourne is losing chunks of time against Rayfin on the straights, but he claws it all back under braking. However, with dust falling fast, track temperatures are plummeting. These tyres are losing their optimal grip window, meaning Bourne's incredibly smooth, slow driving style might inadvertently cause his tyres to drop completely out of their required operating temperature range soon.
Disaster for the caterer. Yellow flags wave as Daniel Bourne spins out on the freezing tarmac. It was a completely harmless 0x netcode tap on the rear bumper, but Daniel is having an absolute meltdown over the team radio. He is screaming that his eggs have been entirely crushed and his carefully prepared virtual braai is totally ruined. He gets the Chevette pointing the right way again, but the psychological damage to his imaginary groceries is absolutely catastrophic out there right now. Darkness envelops the track. Andy East leads MTG and Tomo. Sock Racer is fourth, ahead of Payne Muzzer and Rayfin. Bourne recovers in eighth, followed by Grumpy 1.
This is where the accelerated time cycle becomes a nightmare. Track temperatures have dropped massively in just a few minutes. These drivers are navigating on worn tyres that feel completely like solid blocks of ice.
Through the pitch black darkness, Tomo is still launching his car over the grass to attack MTG. The track limits lawyer is struggling to police the circuit when he can barely see the apexes. This fight for second place is an absolutely terrifying display of high-speed vintage blind driving. Muzzer comes to a complete halt. He lost his drafting host and completely panicked. He parked it until Rayfin passed him, just so he could latch onto a fresh rear bumper again.
It is truly staggering to witness. Muzzer absolutely refuses to drive his car in clean air. When the driver ahead pulled a gap, Muzzer essentially gave up, lifting entirely off the throttle and coasting in the darkness. He waited patiently for Rayfin to catch up and overtake him. The moment Rayfin's Puma went past, Muzzer's competitive instincts instantly rebooted and he tucked straight into his slipstream. He is a textbook parasitic remora, completely reliant on a host to survive today.
Dom Payne is holding up the entire pack at the transition. If you do not type paid in the global chat, he violently blocks.
Double yellows. Muzzer refuses to pay the toll. He barges right past the stationary Dom Payne.
Payne is stopped.
Unbelievable scenes. Dom Payne officially retires his Chevette. The self-appointed local toll booth operator has finally closed shop for the dark night.
MTG inherits second securely now that the bizarre rolling roadblock of Dom Payne has completely vanished.
Rayfin is utilising the massive slipstream to attack Dias. The telemetry truther is gaining huge speed down here now.
Rayfin pulls alongside the AI driver. This is incredibly risky considering his refusal to turn the wheel sharply. He is relying entirely on the AI making evasive manoeuvres because he simply will not tighten his racing line under any circumstances.
Rayfin completes the pass on Dias for seventh. Sweeping so far wide, he nearly scrapes the outside retaining wall. He is driving entirely off his dashboard mathematics. And with Dom Payne officially retired from the session, Rayfin is instantly promoted up into sixth place. The telemetry truther is magically clawing his way back toward the top five despite driving some of the most bizarrely wide, terrifying racing lines I have absolutely ever seen in my entire broadcasting career.
Sock Racer is incredibly aggressive, relying purely on clutch control. He muscles past Rayfin and instantly dives inside Lopes for fifth. His stuck throttle is forcing him to execute extremely desperate overtaking manoeuvres.
I'm still reeling from that retirement. Dom Payne spent the entire race parked on the transition zone trying to aggressively extort £1.50 from his fellow competitors just to use the racing line. He refused to move forward, completely governing his chosen patch of tarmac like a municipal tax collector. He clearly realized nobody was going to open their PayPal accounts mid-race, so he furiously packed up his Chevette and abandoned the Fontana server entirely. Truly spectacular. Brilliant nonsense.
The track is a literal ice rink now. Surviving this final stint requires absolutely flawless concentration.
Rafin is hunting down Sock Racer for fourth. The telemetry truther is trying to find a mathematical way past a driver desperately fighting a completely broken, jammed throttle pedal right now.
Rafin takes fourth position. He calculated his steering inputs flawlessly to sweep past the struggling Sock Racer, who was desperately fighting his car to slow it down properly.
Sock Racer refuses to concede. His throttle surged again, propelling him back alongside Rafin, but Rafin stubbornly defends the extremely precarious inside line.
Sock Racer surges ahead. That jam pedal is a braking nightmare, but it provides a massive unfiltered punch of acceleration on corner exit. He blasts right back past Rafin to reclaim fourth position in a cloud of thick smoke. East leads MTG and Tomo. Sock Racer holds fourth over Rafin and Mugzer. Daniel Bourne sits 10th, still carefully transporting his imaginary Bry.
Daniel Bourne is executing a wonderfully bizarre recovery drive right now. He carefully glides his Chevette alongside Teodoro in the braking zone, making absolutely certain not to induce any lateral G-forces that might disturb his metaphorical catering supplies in the trunk. It is a completely ridiculous self-imposed driving limitation, yet he manages to...
Rafin and Sock Racer are battling side by side. Holdeny loses out to Barros. He is absolutely screaming about aerodynamic drag coefficients on the radio as the faster Fusca slips past his boxy Uno on the incredibly long oval straightaway. He is absolutely furious. But Holdeny launches an utterly suicidal dive bomb coming from 3 car lengths back. He throws his Uno entirely sideways into the dangerous corner, terrifying Barros into yielding pure unhinged aggression.
Barros tries to repass, but Holdeny immediately begins weaving violently across the oval straight to break the slipstream. He knows his Uno is aerodynamically disastrous compared to the rest of the field, so his only chance of survival is pure unhinged momentum carrying and highly aggressive defensive driving. The AI simply cannot compute Holdeny's terrifying corner entry speed. He relies entirely on his competitors taking evasive action to avoid massive accidents. It is incredibly reckless, but incredibly entertaining to watch.
Listen to this team radio. Daniel Bourne is having a complete culinary meltdown in his cockpit. He is frantically screaming that the aerodynamic turbulence from cars behind is dangerously shaking the marinade for his imaginary burrowers. I've never in my life heard a racing driver prioritize potato salad over lap times like this.
Bourne shadows him.
East reigns supreme. Bourne carefully eases his Chevette past Grumpy 1 to snatch 8th position. He executes the pass with agonizing smoothness, creeping over the rumble strips to guarantee those imaginary eggs in the trunk remain perfectly safe and completely uncracked.
It is entirely terrifying to watch on board with Holdeny. That Uno has the aerodynamic properties of a brick, so he is forced to overdrive the car massively in the corners just to compensate for his deficit on the banking. He is constantly on the verge of a catastrophic spin.
Grumpy 1 immediately tucks right back into Daniel Bourne's slipstream. Bourne is going to be absolutely furious about this dirty air. He is terrified that the trailing car's aerodynamic wake is going to ruin his carefully prepared virtual brine meat.
Grumpy 1 is applying intense pressure. He knows Bourne is deliberately compromising his corner exit speeds to avoid bumping the suspension. This makes Daniel incredibly vulnerable to attacks down the long straights.
Grumpy 1 is entirely ruthless. He is practically sitting in Daniel Bourne's trunk right now. Daniel must be sweating over the safety of his imaginary potato salad.
Driving with completely worn tyres in these freezing conditions is already extremely difficult. Having an opponent breathing down your neck while you're simultaneously trying to role-play a grocery delivery service is a recipe for a monumental loss of focus.
Grumpy 1 flashes his headlights. He is desperately trying to intimidate our accidental caterer into making a mistake on the ice-cold tarmac. Bourne is gripping the wheel, fighting to keep the car steady while praying for his precious grocery cargo.
Grumpy 1 cannot find a clear way through. Bourne's bizarrely slow apex speeds are actually acting as a highly effective, unpredictable defense mechanism. You simply cannot anticipate a driver who brakes early purely to protect imaginary sausages in his trunk.
The tension here is unbelievably high. Grumpy 1 mirrors Bourne's every single move through the darkness.
patiently waiting for the absolute perfect moment to ruin Daniel's delicate little catering delivery run.
Andy East's intense paranoia has somehow fueled a brilliantly dominant performance by constantly swerving to break imaginary slipstreams and trusting absolutely no one. He has built an entirely insurmountable 30-second lead gap.
Sock Racer is the absolute undisputed hero of this race. He is firmly holding 5th position, using only his clutch and brakes to manage an 80% stuck throttle. Absolute unyielding vintage bravery.
Cold tyres are making this final stint treacherous.
Grumpy One violently attacks Bourne in the dark.
Grumpy One dives aggressively up the inside, but Bourne refuses to yield. He defensively parks his Chevette right on the apex, desperately determined to protect his extremely fragile cargo at all costs.
Oh, disaster strikes in the darkness. Grumpy One gives Daniel Bourne the lightest, most innocent 0x net code tap on the rear bumper, and Daniel completely loses his mind on the radio. He is absolutely screaming that the eggs in his trunk are crushed. The virtual potato salad is ruined. The Beerowurst is compromised. He is treating a mild racing rub like a catastrophic catering emergency. This is the most incredibly unhinged and entertaining reaction to a gentle bump ever recorded.
Rafin catches back up to Sock Racer. Sock Racer's tyres must be completely destroyed by now, considering how heavily he has been riding his brakes against that jammed throttle.
The telemetry truther pulls perfectly alongside the broken throttle hero. It is an incredible side-by-side battle. Rafin mathematically calculates his bizarrely wide racing line perfectly to sweep right past Sock Racer and snatch back 4th position. What a completely surreal overtake.
But Sock Racer's unpredictable mechanical issue strikes again. His foot slips right off the clutch pedal, resulting in a massive, completely unfiltered surge of 80% throttle. He violently blasts right back past Rafin on the exit. Rafin must be incredibly confused. He is trying to race a man who has absolutely zero control over his own acceleration. It makes Sock Racer impossible to defend against because he does not even know what his car is going to do next out there.
Fast forward to the final minutes, and Muzzer is still entirely content, acting like a parasitic remora. He is firmly glued to Rafin's bumper and point blank refuses to overtake for position.
It completely defies all racing logic. Muzzer clearly has superior pace right now, but his deep-seated psychological fear of pushing through clean air prevents him from making a move on Rafin ahead.
Meanwhile, Rafin is still taking those hilariously wide racing lines. He is dropping wheels onto the grass everywhere, utterly convinced by his glitchy third-party telemetry app that a tight turn will absolutely explode his tyres.
Muzzer is not trying to force a mistake, Martin. He is desperately hoping Rafin stays perfectly on track so he can safely draft him entirely to the finish line without ever leading.
We have sheer madness unfolding further back. Holdeny throws his Uno into the braking zone from a completely impossible distance. He executes an utterly suicidal dive bomb from 3 car lengths back, relying entirely on the AI drivers scattering in terror to avoid him. His unhinged momentum carrying purist strategy is creating an absolute wake of destruction through the slower traffic.
Holdeny violently shoves his way past Teodoro for 12th position. It is certainly not a clinical manoeuvre, but his Uno simply lacks the straight line speed to overtake conventionally. He must rely on sheer braking terror.
Holdeny is violently weaving his boxy Uno back and forth across the oval, screaming furiously over the radio about horrific aerodynamic drag coefficients. He is literally fighting the air itself out there.
The AI programming simply does not understand how a vehicle can enter a corner completely sideways and actually survive.
Teodoro catches Holdeny's massive aerodynamic wake. The AI driver easily sucks right up to the back of the Uno.
Holdeny immediately latches onto Sakira ahead. He desperately needs that slipstream. Without a car to punch a hole in the air for him, his Uno essentially acts as a giant aerodynamic parachute on the high-speed oval sections of this circuit.
Holdeny is preparing another absolutely unhinged dive bomb. He is throwing the Uno through the infield transition with terrifying velocity, preparing to scare the absolute life out of Sakira. The AI driver has absolutely no idea what is coming for him.
Holdeny is completely overdriving the tyres, trying to compensate for his severe lack of top speed.
He throws it inside, Holdeny slides completely sideways, stealing 11th place.
Sekira instantly powers back past him on exit.
Tudoro joins the fight. The AI blows right past Holdeny's painfully slow Uno. Holdeny is frantically weaving again, fighting tooth and nail against the relentless top speed deficit of his boxy machine.
We are in the final minutes. The track is completely frozen. Any driver who abused their tyres during the midday heat will find themselves driving on solid blocks of ice right now.
Holdeny falls backward, but his spirit is unbroken. East leads MTG and Tomo. Sock Racer is securely 4th. Rafin 5th. Muzza 6th. Bourne sits proudly in 7th place.
Holdeny is plunging through the order now. His tyres are completely destroyed from those aggressive dive bombs, and Freire easily breezes right past him. The Uno's aerodynamic drag is simply too much to overcome here.
Barros surges past him too. The Uno is a sitting duck.
The timing screens are absolutely chaotic as Holdeny drops massively backwards.
It is a total free-fall for Holdeny. The AI drivers are swarming him on the straights. He fought valiantly with absolute unhinged aggression, but the aerodynamic penalty is just far too severe.
MTG is comfortably coasting in 2nd place, but he is still furiously monitoring Tomo behind him. He is likely spending these final laps finalising his formal post-race penalty protest against the mathematician.
They have endured an entire 24-hour cycle. In just 60 minutes, their internal clocks are completely shattered, their tyres are frozen solid, and their minds are entirely warped by this Fontana darkness.
Andy East has driven a completely flawless race. His extreme shed-induced paranoia kept him pushing relentlessly, building a gap that nobody could ever match.
Sekira is stalking Holdeny again. The Uno is throwing sparks as Holdeny desperately tries to maintain 11th place. He is wrestling that steering wheel like a madman to break the AI slipstream.
Holdeny simply refuses to quit. He is throwing the car into the tight infield corners with complete disregard for tyre preservation just to hold off the AI.
Sekira's right on his bumper. Holdeny weaves wildly to violently shake him off the draft.
Sekira cleanly executes the pass. Holdeny's desperate defensive weaving finally scrubbed too much speed off his Uno, allowing the aerodynamically superior Puma to comfortably breeze past him on the long, freezing oval.
We are in the final corners. The drivers who nursed their rubber during the scorching midday heat are reaping the absolute rewards. Right now, Holdeny strikes back immediately. He throws one last, entirely desperate dive bomb into the dark transition, violently wresting his brick-shaped Uno past Sekira to securely reclaim 11th. What an unbelievably stubborn momentum purist.
Muzza has perfectly executed his bizarre strategy. He has successfully drafted Rafin for the entire final stint, refusing to pass, completely satisfied with finishing 6th as long as he avoids clean air.
Look at them slide. The grip is completely gone. These vintage machines are practically drifting out of the final corner. The accelerated day-night cycle has absolutely tortured these poor drivers. They are tightly clinging to the steering wheels, desperately praying they do not spin before crossing the final line.
Despite sitting securely on his bumper, Muzza will not overtake him. He is essentially just providing a high-speed escort for Rafin to the finish line. It is the strangest racing philosophy imaginable.
East survived the sweltering shed and total darkness.
A masterful drive from Andy East, transitioning from front-wheel drive minis to this tail-happy Chevette. Requires immense skill, but he completely dominated from start to finish. A truly clinical performance from the champion.
Unbelievable. Daniel Bourne crosses the line in 7th place, successfully delivering his entire imaginary payload of raw berries and potato salad. He crept over those curbs for a full hour, but the virtual catering has officially arrived safely at Fontana.
MTG safely secures 2nd place, likely exhausted from policing track limits instead of solely racing. Tomo crosses the line in 3rd, successfully proving his bizarre penalty mathematics actually work. He straight-lined half the track except to the engine cuts and still beat the entire midfield. It is incredibly controversial, but you truly have to admire his purely chaotic dedication to the calculator.
Sock Racer brilliantly drags his broken 80% jammed throttle Chevette across the line for an astonishing 4th place. He survived an hour of pure smoking, brake riding hell, but behind him the battle for 5th is coming down to the wire between the telemetry truth of Rafin and the ultimate parasitic Remora Muzza. They are completely nose to tail entering the final straight.
Rafin takes 5th position despite refusing to turn his steering wheel past 15 degrees for the entire 60 minutes. His bizarre mathematical racing line somehow worked. Muzza safely crosses in 6th, entirely happy to finish the race, firmly tucked inside Rafin's slipstream without ever attempting a final pass. Muzza successfully preserved his clean air allergy to the bitter end. What an utterly surreal display of vintage multi-class racing.
Bourne holds 7th over Grumpy 1. Holdini wrestles his brick-like Uno to 11th, while Dom Payne DNF'd early after violently realising absolutely nobody would pay his £1.50 transition curb toll booth fee.
What an incredibly chaotic race today. Massive congratulations to Andy East for an utterly dominant victory in 1st. Rafin securing an unexpected 2nd, and Muzza somehow taking 3rd despite his parasitic slipstream strategy. This compressed 24-hour Reval sprint has absolutely tested the psychological limits of every single driver on this grid. Thank you so much for watching.
Be sure to tune in next week for another incredibly chaotic special racing event.